Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December 2021 meeting of West County Democrats. I hope you're enjoying the lovely day. We're discussing that we think we're holding Christmas in August, but holidays are here and we all wish you a very Merry Christmas or whatever you celebrate during this holiday season. All right, this is the last meeting. Hopefully we will be on Zoom. We are scheduled to be back in the hall in January, and you will need a couple of things to be there. The hall is requiring us to check vaccination cards. We don't need a copy of it or anything. We just need a picture on your phone or your card or a Xerox copy just to see it. And we will check you off. And then we also need you to wear a mask. Now, I know that there are a lot of places today that are going past the mandate order, and supposedly it's been dropped in St. Louis County. But we'll know more toward the meeting, and we will update you on what you need at that time. All right, a couple of sad news that has happened to us during this time. We've lost two of our members. One of our founding members, Linda Tinker, was living in California to be near her son's family, and she passed away earlier this month. And unfortunately, this week we lost Tom Flanagan. And for those of you who haven't been around for a while, Tom was my co-chair earlier on, and he was a delightful person. We really miss him, and we hope that, you know, everything for his family is going to be okay. There's a memorial service for Tom. It's going to be held at McGurk's restaurant. Tom obviously wants an Irish wake, and that McGurk's is on Russell in St. Louis on December 17th. That's Sunday, and it's from 12 to 3. And
December 19th.
December 19th. Did I say 17th? 19th.
Yeah.
It's Sunday, next Sunday. And so if you can, come and raise a glass to Tom and wish him a speedy way. And we hope to see you all there. All right, Secretary Gay, you want to tell us?
We currently have our number of 102 members. We are collecting dues now for 2022, and so far 12 of you have responded, so thank you. Reminded me to send mine in also. If you'd like to send in your dues, you can send it into the West County Dems, P.O. Box 31034, St. Louis, Missouri 63131. We look forward to getting your dues, and we all look forward to meeting together soon. That's our report.
I put the address in the.
Can you repeat that
Thank you.
address for me? I wasn't prepared.
Hold it up, Karen.
Can you see it? I also.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Very well.
You're welcome. It's the retired teacher in me. I brought visual aids.
I love it. Well, they're also for the visually impaired, apparently.
Yeah, I always use a big font.
Very nice. I appreciate that. That's very nice.
You're welcome.
Okay, I got it. Thank you so much. I'm new, obviously. And I was wondering how to send in my dues.
All right. All right, thank you. Jan.
Hi, this is the report for November. We had a beginning balance of $4,930.62. We had revenue of $290. 240 of that was for membership dues, and we had a $50 donation. We had $100 in disbursements, which was an honorarium for October. And our ending balance is $5,120.62.
All right. All right, Karen, would you like to introduce our guest speaker?
I will be happy to. We are thrilled to have with us this morning the political director for the Missouri chapter of the Sierra Club, Michael Berg. I see that he's with us. Before working for the Sierra Club, he has worked in China, Bolivia, Paraguay, and South Carolina. Well, all I've done is work in Illinois and Missouri, so way more exciting experiences than I do, probably. Mr. Berg, we'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. And so appreciate the chance to speak to y'all. I'm glad that you're getting together, keeping organizing the West County Democrats. And just first of all, how much time are you thinking for the presentation?
45 minutes.
45 minutes, excellent. Okay, so I'll go through. So what I thought I'd do first of all is I'm going to share my screen. I've got a PowerPoint presentation, what I gave to the Missouri House Democrats last Thursday, I believe. And we'll go over some things that could be happening in the Missouri legislature, issues we're looking at in the Missouri legislature as far as environmental issues. And also I wanted to start by talking about the whole Spire issue. So, okay, so this seems to work. And then, let's see, slideshow from the beginning. So everybody should be able to see the slideshow right now. Okay, so to start out, if you want to get a hold of me, this is my email and my cell number, 314-456-1954, michael.berg@sierraclub.org. I'm gonna go on, but so if you missed that, then I can get that to you later. But again, wanted to deal with, and the Spire pipeline issue you might have noticed recently that's not going away, and how it relates to the broader issue of climate change and methane gas. So y'all probably got an email on November 4th telling you if you subscribe to gas service from Spire, which if you don't subscribe to gas service, that's great. If you do, it's through Spire because they're a monopoly utility, and Spire is regulated by the federal and state authorities because it's a monopoly utility. So just to give the background of the whole issue with the Spire pipeline, back right before it changed the name when it was Liquid Gas, Spire Gas decided it wanted to build a new pipeline to transport natural gas or methane gas, because in my opinion, what we're breathing is natural gas, but it's mostly methane, what they use for heating and of homes and water pumps. But they want a pipeline. Now, the problem with them getting the pipeline was there was no reason for it, because demand for gas in the St. Louis area has been flat for the last decade. So in order to be, as a monopoly utility, if you want an interstate pipeline, you have to get approval from FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And if there's questions, raise your hand to interrupt me. Want to just help y'all out, understand and have a discussion. If not now, afterwards. But they so in order to get this permission, you need FERC's permission, and you have to show that the benefits to consumers and the public for having the new pipeline outweigh the costs, both costs that will be borne by consumers and also the environmental costs of putting this thing in and possible leaks, and then the cost of landowners, because you built this, you have to use eminent domain, you have to have some takings from landowners. So there was no need for it, but in order to demonstrate that there was demand, Spire started a shell company called Spire STL Pipeline, and then put a contract between themselves to show, look, there's someone who wants to buy our gas from this pipeline. It's us. That's called self-dealing. And The decision was made in 2018. I got 2017 here. That's 1 year off. It was decided, they started hearing in January of 2017. And by 2018, the entire FERC was controlled by Trump appointed and approved members. So in a 3-2 decision, they decided to approve this. But the 2 dissenting voices said this is the most egregious case of self-dealing and made up demand that we've ever seen, and it should be reversed in courts. So immediately, a bunch of landowners in Illinois and Missouri, St. Louis County, St. Charles County, and Illinois had a lawsuit because the pipeline goes about 2 counties up Illinois through around Alton into St. Charles County and then into St. Louis County. Some landowners hired the Environmental Defense Fund, which is based in New York City, but it's got lawyers in Washington, D.C., because that's where the courts are. And they hired them to represent them and to have the pipeline not built. But while this was happening, the courts delayed and delayed. They built the pipeline. They built the pipeline knowing that the court case was going in court and that 2 of the 5 members of FERC said this is the most outrageous case and it should be reversed. They built the thing and they finished in 2019, very quickly transferred all of their gas service to the Spire STL pipeline. Now these cases continued, and in something which has not happened for a while, in June of this year, appellate courts, and these are pretty relatively conservative judges at the appellate courts, they said the dissenting voices are right. This should have never been built because FERC did not uphold the laws of the United States of America. And so this pipeline is no longer valid. You have to find another way to get gas to the people of St. Louis. And so what Spire did upon that ruling was to immediately do nothing to transfer how they set up their gas. And we have a lot of evidence that, they got gas from other ways before. There are other pipelines. There's 5 other pipelines in the area they could have contracted from. They could have made the effort to do this. They did not do that. So then in September, it was given a 90-day renewal to use the Spire STL pipeline. And instead of trying to find other ways to get gas, they launched a PR campaign. And the top moment of the PR campaign was on November 4th, when email was sent to all Spire customers saying that New York environmentalists could threaten you from freezing this winter because of gas service cutoffs. Now it might happen. Now the irony is, after it was clear they were not changing where they're getting their gas from, the EDF said, extend it through the winter. The Sierra Club's always supported extending it in the winter. There was literally, FERC had said, yes, we're looking at this, but eventually we're going to extend it to the winter. So literally Spire, there was nobody not wanting it to extend in the winter. So Spire lied to all its customers in order to induce people to contact FERC to support the pipeline. We support extending the winter, but we think that they built this knowing that there was a problem with the way it was set up. They shouldn't get the same number of profit, the same profit margin. They're guaranteed profits. They charge you a pipeline fee right now. So we're paying for this pipeline that they built. And then, that created a lot of fear and a lot of panic because I'm sure people getting out space heaters worrying that you're not going to have access. The other reason they did that was to distract from the fact that natural gas prices are going up because the industry is exporting so much liquefied natural gas overseas. That's the reason the prices are going up. They knew there'd be a rate increase and they just wanted to get in people's head that it was environmentalists that are making this happen, which is not the case at all. So they sent out another email saying that the pipeline had saved consumers of St. Louis $300 million, even though the Public Service Commission of Missouri had explicitly said that claim is wrong and that the pipeline did not save money. The pipeline was not necessary for the winter storm last year. They could have easily come from other pipelines. So, Spire Pipeline has been lying to us, and it's a problem. And you asking why this is an environmental issue. Well, the pipeline is an environmental issue to build it in the first place, but there's a broader issue in that methane gas is a problem. It's right now one of the biggest drivers of climate change. About a third of all climate change inducing emissions in the atmosphere right now come from methane gas, both leaking as a byproduct of fracking and leaking through pipelines. We need to wean ourselves off methane gas. It's also a problem for indoor air pollution. So there is now being contemplated in the EPA new rules for control of gas flares and to decrease gas emissions. We support, our broader goal is a rapid transmission, electrification, a transformation to electric. If we are going to continue industrialized society and not heat our planet to the point where we can't really survive very well, we need to wean ourselves from fossil fuels. So the pathway to there and continue use of modern industrialized society is electrification. You make the electric grid greener and greener and greener using wind and solar, and you stop using the gas and you stop using the petroleum, because you can also make your vehicles more. I mean, stop is an extreme word, but way less. The primary source of automobiles would not be gasoline, but electricity in the future. So the gas industry knows this, and they're doing everything they can to delay this process, which, for example, you might not know, last legislative session, a bill was passed in the Missouri legislature that says that no municipality or county can pass any ordinance or regulation that has the effect of prohibiting any energy source. And the real effect of this is no municipality can set a building code that does not allow gas hookups for new homes. And this was in response, this was passed in many states because in multiple places in California and also on the East Coast, they put in ordinances saying that they're going to phase out their gas, and future buildings, all buildings have to be electric. And so the industry, like in a lot of places, they see things happening in California and New York, and they say, oh, well, let's ban them in places that we can control legislature. So this was again another attack on local control that we've seen, and it also, every Republican supported this, and exactly half of the Democrats in the Senate and the House supported, having been pressured by the utility workers unions, who supported what the utilities told them, especially Spire. But this was a Spire pushed bill. They also pushed a bill a couple of years back to allow replacement of pipes before they were actually worn out. This and the Spire style pipeline, it's the matter of putting the investment, getting the investment in the ground to just increase the cost of transitioning away from this energy source. Because if you say, hey, you're a consumer, you already paid so many hundreds of millions of dollars to put in these gas pipelines, do you really want to then stop using them? But ultimately, like the gas pipelines, you can't transfer electrons through them, so you can't really electrify through them. This is also something that's kind of amazing that told the legislators about. In Oklahoma, there's a proposal in the regulatory bodies and also in the legislature to say that if you want to go all electric and to disconnect your gas and be 100% electric home, you have to pay a $1,400 gas connection fee, which is sort of outrageous attack on consumers. And it's also kind of ironic because the same people pushing that were the ones who were pushing the bill to say that no municipality can determine what kind of energy you use. So on the one hand, they're calling that the Energy Freedom Act and saying you should have a right to use any energy you want. But then on the other hand, they're saying, well, if you want to go away from gas, then you have to pay us money to do that. So this is a big issue with methane coming up that we're looking at. But I wanted to let you know about the Spire issue, and just on the political realm, you know, that Spire with this pipeline, that they had this big PR campaign that was on the radio, it was all the time. There were several politicians who unfortunately sent letters in support of Spire, but Cori Bush was very strongly worded statement in letter to Spire and to FERC in support of consumers and in opposition to, I would call Spire's unethical fear-mongering campaign. You had many members of the Board of Aldermen also pushing back against Spire, and you had St. Louis County Councilwomen Lisa Clancy and Kelly Dunaway, who we appreciate all the members of the Aldermen, Cori Bush, and the councilwomen for not allowing Spire to bully them. So yeah, so this is, I'll go on unless there's questions about this whole gas issue with Spire. Okay, and you stop me if you got anything.
Yes, I have a question. This is Harvey Ferdman.
Yeah.
In moving to electric for all of these things, especially with all the cars coming online, etc., do you see the possibility that nuclear power is going to make a resurgence?
Not anytime soon. So is nuclear potentially something that could be used in the long future? Yes. Does it make any sense to put nuclear online now? No. And there's very concrete reasons for that. I mean, besides just the fact we don't know what to do with the waste, and, you know, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. The other issue is there's been 2 attempts in the last 15 years to build new nuclear power plants. One in South Carolina, at the VC Summers location just north of Columbia, South Carolina, where I lived for many years. And the end result from that is they had ratepayers paid $9 billion to create a very large hole in the ground that produced no energy. The other project, you know, was the Vogel plant in Georgia, which they estimated it would be 11 to 12 billion dollars to build this. Right now, they're nearing completion, but they're at $27 billion. So that's normal to have a little over double the estimated cost overrun, and it takes 15 to 20 years to put online. So we're in a crisis right now. You can put wind and solar online. There's so much that can still be done there immediately. So it is, in the long term, if nuclear gets cheaper and safer, and you figure out these problems, is it possible? Yeah. In the short run, it's too dangerous and it's just not cost effective. So that's our stance on that. All right. Any other questions on this? All right, so we'll go on. A bill we're interested in, and it's worth reading this article I got up here if you got a chance. There was a bill that was pushed, didn't get a lot of press last session. It's Senate Bill 40, but basically it would have frozen all DNR fees for water, for air, and for hazardous waste at the same level. And in order for the fees to be changed, it would have to be approved by the legislature, which would never happen, instead of having the appointed committees being able to do it. And the end result, the likely end result of that would have been the defunding of environmental law enforcement in the state of Missouri, with the EPA having to take over. In addition, this bill made it kind of more methods for sort of hand-holding of people applying for pollution permits, and also no stricter than clause for hazardous waste. And that was why the bill was filed. So basically, the story of this bill is very interesting, because yeah, the no stronger than would have stopped a lot of our present enforcement of hazardous waste law, and ending the voluntary brownfield cleanup program, which is win-win, which industries utilize to clean up their waste to federal standards. But what happened was, there is one businessman named Barry Orslin, who, out in rural areas, you will see there's farm supply stores all over Orslin stores. I think he sold that. He no longer owns those stores, but he still owns a factory in Moberly, Missouri. And the factory long time ago used a chemical called TCE, which is highly cancer causing. And there's still TCE in underground areas in his plants. And the DNR determined there was a likely problem of vapor intrusion of this chemical into the plant. And they said he had to do this, this, and this, and this. And he thought, I don't want to do this. It's not my fault. I don't want to do it. So he had sent back and was like, well, I see this, this, and this. I don't have to do it. DNR sent back, like, no, you don't have to. They have a long back and forth with their lawyers. And so he's annoyed. He's also, Barry Orscheln's on the Conservation Commission himself. But so he decided to utilize former Senator Kurt Schaefer and lobby, and it's all in this article, basically as kind of, one, we're going to change the law on hazardous waste. That way we don't have to do what DNR told us. I mean, I think it was mad at Carol Comer, who recently died. He was the head of DNR. And one, not only are we going to change the hazardous waste law, we're going to just put these ridiculous provisions about the fee freezing. I mean, it's kind of like mafioso type thing. Like, oh, you do this, I'm just going to destroy your agency. So last year, the Senate Bill 40, they also tacked onto that bill a provision about saying that St. Charles County, Franklin County, and Jefferson County did not have to enforce vehicle air emissions standards for vehicles on the road and registered in their jurisdictions. So this actually, it passed the Senate. It was on completely partisan lines, although it was very disappointing, and that would have liked to see like any of the Democrats filibustering to try to stop it, because it was probably the worst environmental bill I've ever seen. So it passed, and it was moving its way through the House, and it was just one step. It was ready to go to the floor, and the buzzer ran out from passing the House. And so it was very close. And it's been filed this year again without the fee place, but no stricter than hazardous waste. So we will be looking to try to stop that. The provisions about the vehicle emissions testing in the 3 counties, that actually did pass. They tacked that onto another bill. And the irony of that is the senators from St. Charles County and Franklin County, so Schatz, Eigel, and Onder, were going on and on about this incredible burden, which literally is the equivalent of $15 a year fee, and then you get it inspected, and the inspection, you have to take it in for safety inspection anyways. And they were going on and on and on about how people were being burdened, which, okay, but then when it actually appeared in committee, like I know that it's hard to get to Jefferson City and it's hard to do all that, but there were literally zero people who thought it necessary to testify and say, we really want this emissions testing taken away. You had Ray McCarty from the Associated Industries of Missouri testifying that they didn't want to enforce environmental law, that kind of thing. But like about the emission testing, all these talks about how people are clamoring for freedom to not have to do vehicle emissions testing, and they literally had zero testimony. And the bill was tacked on to other bills, so like it never had a hearing. So this provision, which would have led to more dirty air in the whole St. Louis area. The reason when it passed, it was vetoed by the governor because the EPA sent a clear letter saying, if you do this, we will deny you highway funds. So it would have cost probably $52 million in highway funds a year. And I'm not often saying this, but let's give Governor Parson credit for doing that. He did not cost us $52 million in highway funds because Bob Onder, Bill Eigel are pontificating bullhearts. So that's where we are there. Other, there's other issues on water, like something that should know about is that's an issue probably worth knowing about factory farms in Missouri. There's been a systematic dismantling of the ability of the state at any level and the ability of people in the state to protect themselves from pollution caused by factory farms, like CAFOs, confined animal feeding operations. Large operations could have 20, 30,000 pigs crammed into little concrete boxes, and their feces goes into giant lagoons, and it causes odors, it contaminates streams. It's a real environmental problem. But in 2016, a bill was passed. In fact, it was like an amendment to the last second on a bill that was snuck in, never had a hearing, to change the representation on the Clean Water Commission. So it used to be that 6 out of 7 members had to represent the public interest in some way on the Clean Water Commission. Now it's the opposite. It says that only 1 member can represent the public interest. All the other members must represent the interest of agriculture, our industry. And then there's 1 who represents the municipal waste services like MSD. So it is now public representation free, and it just rubber stamps anything factory farms want. Another check was local counties were able to set health ordinances to say, hey, these lagoons have to be so-and-so distance from a stream, or there has to be only a lower amount of odor that comes through. 2019, a bill was passed, really pushed bipartisan, to ban the ability of local communities to set their own health ordinances to protect themselves from factory farms. This is, as you notice, a theme, the irony of a party that used to say local control matters and the government closest to people is the highest, the best. Well, this is the opposite, as it was with plastic bags and all sorts of issues, minimum wage. But, in the Sierra Club, we want environmental protection. We don't have any stance on local control. If it's the local government that protects better, we want the local government. If the federal government, we want the federal government. But there is an inconsistency on the people actually pass these laws. In this case, yes.
This is Glenn Keenan. I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
How does Parsons legislative support, how does that tie into the freedom to farm movement? The idea that somebody could put a hog farm right next to my house in my subdivision, and as long as they could get the hogs, they could do that.
Yeah, well, this is, they still have to pass some, there's still some DNR regulations, but it's not much, not enforced well. I mean, the brakes on putting a giant hog operation somewhere are getting fewer and fewer. But, Parson, that passed, I think in 2014, the right to farm bill, that's law. So, yes.
Michael, this is Gay Meekum. These mega pig farms, I think a lot of them are out there in Northwest Missouri, yes. But they're also all Chinese owned, or majority of them are Chinese owned. So we're basically kind of a third world country for them. And how do you get the nitrates from the pigs? How do you get that out of the water? Because it goes into the groundwater, which then comes to the Mississippi and Missouri rivers.
You don't. I mean, this is the problem. This is there's better ways to raise animals. I mean, another thing we were looking at is they've set up a natural gas program. And like the details, I could ask someone else. But the problem is, you're right. It's too much nitrates. Yeah. They've set it up. And also the point you bring up about the Chinese ownership, it's a good one. And like, we're not endorsing the Senate race, but I do appreciate one of the Democratic candidates, Lucas Kuntz, has been putting this issue forward as one of his campaign issues. And I think it's a very good issue. It is an issue of national sovereignty because Smithfield Food.
And I think people should know that Smithfield Farms, which was a wonderful Virginia company, is now owned by the Chinese. Yeah. So if you're eating pork, buy some other brand.
Or buy pork from a small a small pig farm. Like there's,
Yeah.
it's also the thing is you can raise the animals differently in smaller, larger areas. Yeah. And you don't have the same environmental issues. Like if the feces is dispersed, it's not such a problem. It doesn't create the methane, which they passed a program last year also to allow natural gas companies like Spire to work with Smithfield or Shuanghai to gather the gas. It's a complicated process, and then use it. And it's a little tricky. Nobody really seemed to understand our argument, but Sierra Club very much opposed this. One, because it helps. The biggest thing, it helps greenwash two of the most environmentally destructive entities there are, which is the factory farm industry and the natural gas industry. And I'm sure Spire is going to start touting this program, even though under the best case scenarios, it's only a tiny amount compared to the frack gas that you can get from this. And also, if you raise the animals differently, you would have never had this kind of methane buildup in the first place. So it's kind of a greenwashing thing, but that program is now in place. Yeah. So just wanted to go over briefly. This is actually not as said this for the legislators, but so there's some good bills and some bad proposals about solar energy. There's a solar bill of rights that's been proposed by Burleson, Senator Burleson is actually one of the worst senators in most things, but this is a good bill that would just basically set it up so that homeowners associations cannot enact rules so onerous that someone is unable to put solar on their house, because that people have had problems like that with homeowners association. Someone out in West County, Frances Babb, has had major legal issues with trying to make sure she can utilize her solar. There's a proposal for solar sales tax exemption and proposals to allow community solar, which allows multiple people in a community to go in and utilize the same solar panels so that you can get solar more widely without the same barriers for entry. Because one of the things is, you use electricity you put on a solar panel, over a couple decades, you save an enormous amount of money, but you have to have some upfront costs. And not everybody can get those kind of upfront costs. So there's also a bill to hurt the net metering program that we'll be opposing. So these are kind of some of the solar issues. It might be harder to read because of the background, but I really like this picture, so I did this. Issues of wind energy. There's been a whole saga with the Grain Belt Express. If you don't know about this, Grain Belt is a now underway proposal to have a very large transmission line to transport wind energy from Southwest Kansas through Kansas to northern Missouri, and then through Illinois to Indiana. And it would drop off a very large amount of that energy into Missouri. There's already contracts with a group of municipal utilities to utilize the energy. We're mostly Ameren in this area, but the one utility that is municipally owned in the St. Louis area is Kirkwood. But they're all throughout the state. So Kirkwood already has a contract to buy its energy from Grain Belt. There was a lot of push, years and years of attempts to stop it from going on, saying that there shouldn't be eminent domain utilized. The project would not push anybody out of their homes, but it would, the transmission line goes over a lot of farms, and the Farm Bureau was behind a lot of groups trying to stop this from happening by citing the eminent domain issue, which I kind of understand. We need eminent domain for things to happen, but that's why we have a process to determine what is and is not beneficial for the community. There's been a lot of eminent domain abuse, I know, in the St. Louis area, so it is a real and problem issue, but it's kind of galling to me that the Farm Bureau didn't raise a peep when farmland was taken to build the Spire pipeline, didn't seem to care. The Missouri Farm Bureau also put in support for the building of every Keystone pipeline that's gone through this state. And a lot of farmers didn't like that going through their land. They didn't seem to care. So I don't know what the real motivation is. But like, I sympathize with people who don't want it, but it's, if we're going to transition to renewable energy, this is needed infrastructure. And we think that it's finally going to be built. They've bought up some of the land, but there will be bills to try to stop it. So there's other bills that make it more difficult to put wind up. And so we'll be looking at that. And the other thing we'll be looking at, just making sure they're fully protecting public land and retain the independence of the Missouri Department of Conservation and protecting the 11-point state park, where there's litigation pending, which we think will win, to protect the 11-point state park. But there's always legislation to try to sell it. And so we'll be looking at those kind of issues. Another issue which was not in the presentation, but want you to know about, we're always looking at issues of development in the Howard Bend Levee area in Maryland Heights. It's a floodplain area, and there's a golf course there, there's a casino, and it really is a bad idea to put more pumps, and not to put the more pumps, but you put the more pumps so you can have more development, because it is a floodplain right there next to Creve Coeur Park. And so we are looking to try to make sure that ARPA money, federal money, is not being used to fund very badly thought out floodplain development. So looking, a couple things left to look at climate change legislation. There's a good bill filed by Representative Elbrecht for Missouri to confront climate change issue, modeled after what they did in Washington State. It's not going to pass because this legislature, I mean, they the last few years passed legislation condemning the Green New Deal, and people going up there denying that the planet is heating up, which is insane, because we just had a tornado on December 10th, which is scary. And as you know, and threatened the Westlake landfill, caused a lot of damage, killed the people in Edwardsville. But so I'm glad it's on record what Representative Albrecht is doing. He's a Democrat, but I don't think that's going anywhere. But the thing that's kind of scary is that I just learned a couple days ago. Are you all familiar with ALEC? If you, in case you're not, ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a group funded by the Koch brothers, who are fossil fuel industrialists who support very right-wing ideas. And what they get legislators together and they make model bills, which then are just cookie cutter sent to legislators all over the country to support the fossil fuel industry and also other kind of regressive ideas, not related to fossil fuel, but they're definitely, their prime mover is protecting fossil fuel investments. And so someone sort of labeled this critical energy theory because it kind of fits, but basically the idea is that if an institution or company divests from fossil fuels, decides they are not going to put investments for fossil fuels or even stop buying certain fossil fuels, then the institutions would not be able to do business with the Missouri government. So it's punishing companies and institutions for trying to do a little bit to make sure that we survive in the long run. And this bill has got the model legislation. It has not been introduced in the Missouri House, but there's no way it's going to stay unintroduced. If Alec wrote it, someone's going to introduce it. It was modeled after a similar bill that was passed 2 years ago. They called it an anti-BDS bill, which punishes companies that if they divest or sanction or refuse to buy from Israel or companies that do business in Israel, they cannot do business with the state of Missouri. And bills like that were passed all over the country, including the United States. I mean, not this is the United States, including Missouri. And this bill, this ALEC bill, is modeled under the same principle, but instead of Israel, it's fossil fuel industries. So I would think that would be challenged by the First Amendment. The anti-BDS bills are being seriously challenged in courts by a man from Texas, but the federal court is attacking the First Amendment. But this is out there, and it's kind of crazy. And then we're just looking at issues of federal dollar funding, like making sure there's some good things in the infrastructure bill. There's still ARPA money coming. Hopefully Build Back Better passes. I'm sure as West County Democrats, I'm sure you're supportive of Biden's agenda, which is a very good agenda. But some of the good money coming in from infrastructure bill, upgrades of water infrastructure, which is great, and improving public transportation, and then money to set up electric vehicle charging stations throughout the state. So these are some of the funds we're looking at. I think this is about half an hour, not 45 minutes, but want a chance just to discuss if there's anything you thought didn't agree with what I said, or you want to discuss more. Let's use the time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do we get someone as a public representative on the Clean Water Commission?
You have to change the law.
Oh, is that all? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, right now you can't, because that's not how it works.
All right.
It's yeah.
I mean, there's a little spot. I looked at the website and there's a little spot for somebody to be named at some point, but yeah. Okay.
Well, but there's criteria. It has to be, so senator has, all these commissions, senator has to propose.
Uh-huh.
And then the governor has to agree. And the governor appoints among the people who have signed, who've done this, and then the Senate has to approve. So, you can't if it doesn't meet their rules right now. Yes, Christine, I think your hand is up. Yeah, it's on mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I understand the need to get away from fossil fuel, but it really makes me nervous that we are going to give Ameren a total control over all of our energy use. So when I lose electricity where my house is, trees fall on the transmission lines to my house, and then because I have a gas hot water heater in the winter, I can still survive in my house with hot water and cooking on the top of my stove. If we get rid of the gas, which, I understand that, how are we going to control it so Ameren can't kill us when we, have power failures? I mean, we need to get net metering and other ways to correct or enhance the grid so that we don't have these big power failures before we give them total control over our energy.
Yeah, and first of all, nobody is proposing, just like the Sierra Club supported keeping the pipeline open in the winter, nobody is proposing everybody just get off gas right now. But the reality is, like, we can't keep doing this and still surviving. I think one of the issue you're bringing up, I think better, like small cell battery storage. Battery storage is getting better and better technology. And if someone had a little bit of, some spare, there is an issue because right now you got separate systems. So if you got gas, and the gas goes out the water, but sometimes if there's a big storm, they both go out. And they've shown that, like, gas.
I've never lost my gas ever.
Me.
That's great. That's great.
And I can't put solar panels on my slate roof. You can't drill holes in your slate roof. So I'm like, no, I don't have another source of heat.
Yeah, this is where community solar is good and battery backup is helpful. But the fact of the matter is, and I do agree with, because like Ameren's also, pretty bad actor in a lot of
They
ways.
keep raising their rates. They keep getting, blank,
They both do.
yeah.
They both keep raising their rates, and Ameren and Spire have both been bad actor. But I mean, the reality is you can take the climate change enhancing elements slowly out of the electric grid. You can't take it out of the gas grid, so the gas pipelines. So, in the long run, we got to do this. But I think, yes, battery backup would be good.
Michael,
Yeah.
are there any countries out there that have nationalized like their gas and things like that? And if so, do they work?
I mean, I don't have enough information to answer. And there's definitely questions. I mean, there's entire communist countries which everything is nationalized. But there's all sorts of municipal utilities and publicly run utilities. And I think that's a better way. I mean, the thing with the idea, the positives as presented of capitalism is that competition brings innovation and lower costs. So when you have a natural monopoly, like Ameren is a natural monopoly, Inspire is a natural monopoly, the profit incentive, it's basically, they have to have all these regulations. They have guaranteed profits, but then the regulations are good, but then they have a bunch of lobbyists to determine what these regulations are and how they're presented. So like Ameren's got like 70 lobbyists that go to Jeff City. Spire's got dozens. So for example, this electrification preemption bill, which again, this thing that says that a municipality cannot have new homes transition to all electric, was prompted by literally no municipality in the state was actually considering it at the time, but they were just preempting it ever happening in the future. Like the Spire lobbyists just went up and said, didn't even present an argument, just like, we want this. That was a very persuasive argument for folks. So yeah, I didn't come prepared like looking at all the cases, but a lot of public utilities, and since it's a monopoly anyways, there's no real reason to allow. I mean, the idea is, this was what was so galling, this whole manufactured price that Spire had. During this entire thing, while they had these radio ads up saying, you might freeze in the winter, the sky is falling, the financial press reported they had higher than expected profit levels. Their shares went up, and they released that they were going to have increased dividends, which to me is just outrageous. Is that like, you built this thing and you're charging consumers. It's the fault of ultimately the shareholders through their elected board control what the executives do. The penalty should be put on not the consumers who never asked for it, but on the shareholders and the executives. But it didn't happen because, so we'll see. This stuff is being decided. We're asking for, we don't necessarily want the pipeline closed down at this point because it's already there. But if it's allowed to function, there should be greatly decreased profit margin so that other utilities don't build these things if there's not a demand. And they should not be able to profit off something that didn't need to be built. But yeah, the question about nationalization and municipal utilities, it works in some place, but like, I can't go into what I know details, but.
Thank you.
All right, Michael,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this really informative talk. If people want to contact you, you want to be contacted at the phone number or Sierra Club?
Either way,
Okay.
you can contact my cell, or you can just I guess that's still up. Yeah, write to me, michael.berg@sierraclub.org.
All right, that's good. Thank you very much.
So much.
All right, now, very quickly, just a reminder, We're back in the hall next month. You're going to need a mask, proof of vaccination, and bring your own coffee because we are not going to do refreshments. So, but we will be back in the hall next month. Now we have our report from Glenn Conan, and he's going to give us the gloom and doom. I'm sorry. Who's talking?
Hello.
Hello.
I think it was Glenn.
My home phone rang at exactly the same time as I unmuted. So,
Okay.
first of all, let's talk about Amazon for 1 minute. They had a 1 million square foot building over in Edwardsville. In that 1 million square feet were only 7 full-time Amazon employees.
Oh my God.
Virtually everybody else there. One of the mechanics working on their trucks who passed away. 2 of the people who drove trucks who passed away. Amazon has very few employees. Everybody works for contractors. And even though they drive an Amazon truck and wear an Amazon shirt, they work for companies you never heard of. And it'll be interesting to see what happens since they died on the job, whether their families will be taken care of by a multi-billion-dollar company or by a little local subcontractor who handles things like truck repair. Last month, I talked about the PRO Act, the one proposal in Congress to tighten regulations on self-employed people, or supposedly self-employed people. This, I think, is going to become a prime example of how big corporations avoid their obligations by going out of their way to have layers and layers of subcontractors protecting them. Now, how about a little geography lesson? The National Democratic Party is headquartered at 430 South Capitol Street, Southeast in Washington, D.C. The Republican Party is headquartered at 1100 East Blue Heron Boulevard, Riviera Beach, Florida. That's the official address of Mar-a-Lago. There is no way that Mitch McConnell or Kevin McCarthy or any of the other Republicans can be claiming to lead the Republican Party right now. Because what Donald wants, Donald gets. And actually, the real power is with a handful of people, including Matt Gaetz, who relay messages from Trump to Washington. We have a bizarre situation where a party that once boasted people like Jack Danforth would not be a Republican. And he would not be in a party so disorganized. But what that means coming up for this next year, we are not going to see much happen in Congress. Mitch McConnell did agree to a crazy loophole to allow the debt ceiling to be raised with just Democratic votes. Instead of having the normal 60 votes you need to get something out of the Senate, he persuaded 9 Republicans to vote with Democrats to pass this loophole. So we were able to push the debt ceiling back for a few more weeks, because even Mitch McConnell didn't want to see people losing their jobs right before Christmas. So there might be one little ember left in there. But the thing is, these are the good old days. It's going to get worse. The Republicans, they have no reason to attack Trump. They have no reason to defend. All they can do is defend Trump. If you notice, even Mike Pence is now saying that the January revolt in the Capitol was just a protest, even though they're saying hang Mike Pence. There is a lot of history being rewritten right now in Washington on speeches on the floor of the House and the Senate. It's amazing how quickly people forget. Something we don't want to forget, though, is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to hand Republicans several victories this term. Now, the only question is, will the Supreme Court overplay their hand? The big one, of course, is on the Texas and Mississippi abortion laws. It looks like the majority of the court is looking to overturn Roe v. Wade. Overturning a major Supreme Court decision is exceedingly rare. And the majority of Americans in every single survey want to see abortion legal in most cases. So this could be a case of the Republicans, by getting what they say they want, finding out it's something they can't swallow. The other problem is there are going to be several things coming up this term on guns, which is a good issue for the Republicans, and also the Trump papers and the whole idea of sovereign immunity, of executive privilege, is going to wind up in the Supreme Court this term. If the conservatives disregard more than 200 years of American constitutional law, they can find a way to protect Trump from the January Commission and from a lot of other legal things. But Trump is dragging things out, and Trump is making it very clear that he wants all these cases to go to the Supreme Court. So if nothing else, the Supreme Court's going to be hearing a lot of strange arguments over the next few months. Another thing that's coming up to the Supreme Court is a way around federal sovereignty. Remember, we have the Missouri Second Amendment Preservation Act we passed the other year that said that in Missouri, a law enforcement officer can be fined $50,000 if they cooperate with the federal government on a Missouri citizen regarding firearms. That came up this weekend. The guy who is accused of shooting the Metro bus driver, his lawyer is saying, because the major case squad sent the bullet that was found in the gentleman who was shot to the FBI, that evidence can't be used in a Missouri court now.
Holy crap.
And there are people saying that, unfortunately, if Missouri is allowed to do that, there are other challenges. Part of what the Texas case is based on is the idea that the state can refuse to enforce parts of federal law and rule because they're sovereigns themselves. That is something we're going to watch very carefully. It might not be in big cases. It might be in a bunch of little cases, but there's a very good chance that the court will chip away at the whole idea of federal supremacy. Here's some really bad news. More and more analysts are expecting Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine in the next few weeks. And it looks like we're not going to be able to do anything about it. The Republicans have made very clear that they will not support military action. The Republicans also know that Vladimir Putin, one of his best friends, lives at 1100 East Blue Heron Boulevard in Riviera Beach, Florida. The Republicans will not want to do anything that makes Trump mad at them. That means they have to let Putin do what he wants. So for the first time in almost 100 years, we're going to see a nation in Europe lose its sovereignty, and nobody's going to do anything but stand around and watch. Last thing on the federal front, you may have seen this in the paper. Remember how meat prices went through the roof and have gone through the roof? You people have studied this up and down from USDA to the grocery stores. And what they found is that the farmers got a little bit more money for their cattle and hogs. They found that the grocery stores actually cut their profit margins on meat during the pandemic. The middlemen, the meat packers, they had a 300% increase in profit during the pandemic. Remember, 85% of the meat sold in America goes through 5 packing companies. So you might want to call it a cartel, you know, the OPEC of hamburger. But the thing is, that's something very, very real. And that's something in normal times, when you had a Democratic majority in the House and Senate, you might be able to get some antitrust stuff going. Now, back to fun and games in Jefferson City. The legislators have been pre-filing bills. Unfortunately, nobody limits what they can say in their bill, what they can propose. However, at the first turn, We have a House Bill 1451 to make January 12th Rush Limbaugh Day. There is even some talk over the weekend. They may try to do that in the first day of session so they can get it in place before this January 12th. House Bill 1450. You must be registered with a party to vote in the primary. In effect, would be going to close primaries in Missouri. Also, it would provide a way, more personal information to the state. When you register to vote, they get a lot more personal information about you than they do now. But the closed primary, that won't be anything of a problem for us. You think of all your friends who generally don't vote Democratic or vote Republican, but they don't go to West County Dem meetings, they don't go to Republican meetings. If they would suddenly have to vote in a primary, you would only have registered members of the party. And that would really cut down the number of people voting in primaries. And of course, on the Republican side, the people most likely to vote then would be the extreme of the extreme. The people who think that that Rush was always right, that Trump is forever their president, and so on. House Bill 1476 reverts control of the St. Louis City Police back to the state of Missouri. Ironically, that bill is pushed by a gentleman who lives in Defiance. I don't really think St. Louis City Police politics mean much out there. 1477 is one of a large number of bills, we'll talk about another one in a minute, to expand the stand your ground law. It's no longer enough to say you can shoot somebody on your property versus trying to steal your hubcaps. Under the expanded stand your ground, if you were, say, at the grocery store parking lot and somebody was walking towards you and you had time to get in your car and drive away, you have no obligation. You can reach into your trunk and get a rifle instead and shoot them. Expanding stand your ground to where the presumption is that the shooter is right. There's several bills on that, and unfortunately, one of them is going to pass. House Bill 1483 would create a state level group of committees and commissions to oversee elections. And deep in the wording, it appears that these committees, which would include sitting members of the House and Senate, would have the ability to call into question an election decision or election result. Also, there's in the same bill, it would prohibit most voting by mail or prior to election day. And in the one clause, it appears to say, if you want to vote absentee, you have to personally appear at the election board to request your ballot. No mailing of ballots to 95-year-old people who live in nursing homes. Also, 1502, one of the most un-American bills I've ever heard of, would create a crime of failing to identify yourself when somebody asks who you are and asks to see your ID. Not just a policeman after, say, a car accident, but if Mary Brown was walking down the street and she thought that Sandra looked suspicious, she could make Sandra pull out her ID and show her who she was. Hopefully that won't get very far. Another thing, Missouri actually has a little bit of money now. So one of the sales tax exemptions being proposed is to exempt guns and ammo from sales tax.
Oh,
That gets complicated when I get to the Senate. And another one, House Bill 1621, which seems to be the best pro-life legislation on the chart so far. It requires fathers to pay child support from the date of conception.
yay. I like this one.
But how do you do the record keeping? Anyway,
You keep a pad of paper in your purse and you get his social security number before you have sex.
how romantic.
I know.
Also, as I was talking about the Second Amendment Preservation Act on the federal part, House Bill 1639 allows the Missouri House and the gubernatorial administration to not enforce presidential orders they deem unconstitutional. So in other words, Missouri could unilaterally decide that an order from the president doesn't count in Missouri. Think COVID. All the rules, for example, that say that if you're on a bus, you have to wear a mask, and a lot of the restrictions, Missouri would say that doesn't count here. If we don't like it, you don't have to do it. Now, the really scary things, though, are in the Senate. Senate Bill 666. Yes, that is its real number. Senator Burleson from Southwest Missouri, who wants to go to Congress. He is proposing a bill, and in the press release, he cited this bill would prevent situations like what happened to poor Kyle Rittenhouse. It would expand stand your ground to an extreme. If what happened you said was reasonable, it would be up to the prosecutors to prove it was unreasonable, even to charge you. So in other words, because Kyle Rittenhouse thought that property in the neighboring state was in danger, he could take a gun he wasn't legally allowed to possess, go to that state and shoot people. But we got to protect the Kyle Rittenhouses in Missouri. Senate Bill 6, it's going to get legs. And Burleson's got a lot of friends in the legislature. He wants to go to Congress. It's going to get a hearing, and who knows what it'll look like when it comes out. But the most scary one, Senate Bill 946. Remember that number, Senate Bill 946. Senator White, another rural Republican, is talking about creating the Missouri Minutemen. The Minutemen would only be known to the Department of Public Safety. They would take their orders directly from the governor. They would be allowed to have guns and other tactical equipment without special permits, and it wouldn't be registered. And the idea is the governor could send them into emergency situations at his discretion. We're not talking National Guard members. We're not talking sheriff's deputies or auxiliary sheriff's deputies. We are talking the Missouri Minutemen, a secret police force answerable only to the governor, and only the governor and a few bureaucrats could even know who they were. Wonderful. Keep an eye on that one, folks. Redistricting is another fun topic. I heard Harvey on earlier, as you probably have heard, none of the redistricting proposals are going very well. It looks like everything's going to wind up in the courts. In St. Louis County, we're winding up in federal court. In state level, it's going to go into court as well for both the House, the Senate, and the congressional. The congressionals are going to wind up in court, but the Republicans are going to try to push through their plan probably in the first 7 days of the legislative session. Because they're going to try one stab. From what we have heard, and this changes by the hour, the biggest problem for Republicans right now is they're not playing well together. They're trying to come up with a map that will result in 7 Republican Congress members and 1 Democrat. But they also want to cut up the St. Louis area. At the same time, some Republicans want to minimize the impact of the conservative caucus, which has a bunch of St. Charles County and central Missouri. So there's a lot going on there. But redistricting is going to wind up being a court fight, and it is going to be messy. On the kind of good news, on October 1st, the state started taking applications from adults for Medicaid expansion. By the end of October, it only signed up 14,005 people. So in other words, out of 300,000 possible, it only signed up 14,005.
Wow.
It's actually worse than that, because the one thing they've been doing, pregnant women over age 21 and other specialized subgroups like immigrants over age 21 are being transferred into the adult eligibility group to boost that number. The reason that they need to do that is they're having complete system breakdown. In the month of November, according to their official statistics, the average wait time for somebody calling the Department of Social Services was 3 hours and 8 seconds. The average wait time was 3 hours, 8 seconds. They are imploding. They can't get staff. They can't keep staff. Right now, they're essentially working with 7 Medicaid programs running in like horses. They're all chained together, but they're not really running all the same direction right now. The food stamp program has issues. It's expected that it is going to take until December of 2023 at the current rate for all the people who are now eligible for expanded Medicaid to get it. Just because the bureaucracy is so stripped down, it can't respond. So in a way, there's 2 ways of doing things. You can say you're not going to do them, or you can so starve the system that it can't do its job. And we're also seeing the same thing in food stamps. People are losing their food stamps because they can't get through to renew their applications on time because there's so much going on. There's so much wait time. So anyway, any questions? Marion. Unmute, Marion. Marion, can you unmute? Anybody else have a question?
I do have a question. I just couldn't turn the thing off. I understand that Governor Parson now has decided that he will increase the minimum wage for persons working in the state government, and probably just because he's lost so many workers. And I don't know his motivation is that pure, but people might be getting better wages.
He's going to go talking about a $15 an hour minimum state wage, which ironically will be about a $2 an hour increase for some people working for the Department of Mental Health, people in client or patient services. That's about what they're paying people in MoDOT now, about $15 an hour. So there's not as much there, but it will help them in some of their lower paying jobs. The big problem they're having, according to people in the Department of Social Services, if you apply for a job there, they no longer give you a job description until they can get you in the building and talk to you. Because what they found is 90% of the people they send job descriptions to don't show up for the interview.
Wow. Interesting.
Yes, Dennis.
I guess I'm just curious, and I'm not sure if it's effective or not, is whether with the delay, the bureaucratic delays and Medicaid and those kinds of things, whether there's a potential for a court case where you could get some sort of a court order. But then, of course, if the whole thing is stuck up, maybe that doesn't work. But I guess that's what I'm wondering is whether there is a role for the courts to play to try to enforce the eligibility that should be there and try to get the wheels greased, even if it meant transferring some of that under the jurisdiction of the courts. That's the potential, I suppose. But anyway, comments, please.
The legal service groups around the state are aware of this and they're working together. Part of the problem is the state doesn't have the warm bodies to process. In other words, the court can order all they want, but the court cannot make the state of Missouri fine 2,000 workers and pay them enough money to make them do an incredibly hard job. Can you imagine what their mood is after they've been on hold for 3 hours and their food stamps or their Medicaid for their child is hanging in the balance? That's not a happy person. And the state just does not have the people. And you go outstate now, and it's not just in the St. Louis area. The legislature always like to talk about programs like Medicaid and food stamps as urban issues. The irony is the greatest increase in people covered under Medicaid are going to be in counties with less than 30,000 people, where they have all small employers, and the small employers can't provide health insurance. So when we were first talking about Medicaid expansion several years ago, the one Republican legislator told me we ought to call it the Dairy Queen Act, because this is where the people who work at Dairy Queen will get medical coverage. And in small towns, they understand Dairy Queen. Any other questions?
Just an observation. Does anybody in the Missouri legislature know what's in the US Constitution?
Some of the Democrats do.
I think they do. That's why they're trying to work around it.
Mhm.
Well, we'll just ignore the Constitution.
Well,
So irritating.
But if you look at the whole debate on COVID, look at what's happening in the states with Republican governors. They're ignoring the rules, they're ignoring the science, and now they've got millions of people convinced that when you get a shot, you get free microchips.
Oh.
You know, and or the shot, you know, the shot causes cancer, the shot causes you to go sterile, the shot causes, COVID. But the thing is, people are believing, the whole idea of believing science is dead. What's science now?
And now Chris Wallace has left Fox News. So there was there one believable human.
You need to go online this morning. Now they're saying the reason he left Fox News is because there's photographs of him on Jeffrey Epstein's island.
No, I don't believe that. No. Although I'm not a fan, so.
all right.
Any other questions for Glenn, huh?
Any other?
Either Glenn or Karen. Oh, may I have someone ahead of me here?
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, either Karen or Glenn. The county council, when does that kind of go to court? The timing for that? I realize that a lot of it's up to the courts in terms of how soon they want to decide. And then likewise, Glenn, I guess maybe for the state and house, when does that formally go to the courts so that we can, I guess I'm just trying to get an idea in each one of those, what roughly we can anticipate for timing, even though we realize that's totally up to the courts in terms of how they want to consider it and how fast they move.
In St. Louis County, we filed our federal lawsuit a little bit before the Republicans filed theirs. Their lawsuit is actually very fun to read. It turns out Karen and I and the rest of the Democratic commissioners were being secretly influenced by 20 John Does who were speaking in our ear and telling us what to do.
Damn, they called me.
The funny thing was, every other time I've been lobbied, I've at least got, a donut out of it. We didn't get anything this time. But our lawsuit is based on the fact that the Republican approach, first of all, there have to be lines, and the lines have to be adjusted. The Republican approach is unfair to major segments of the community because it breaks up municipalities at pretty much at will, and it unfortunately packs African Americans into a smaller area. They're trying to say that our approach is wrong because we were mean to Tim Fitch. Yes, that is it. Tim Fitch moved from Fenton in the southern part of his district to an apartment complex about 80 yards from the northern edge of his district, and everybody knew that the districts were going to go south by west. Well, he doesn't want to move, and he wants that line changed. But to do it puts a great big bubble, what Karen, and Sue Meredith like to call the Trump face, on that district. So that's going to go, that'll wind up in court. We're very happy with our case. We have a lot of friends behind us. The Republicans are using a lawyer who claims to be a specialist in 27 different things in a one-man firm. So that may help our odds too. At the state level, I don't think the House and Senate have officially declared a deadlock yet. Harvey have the House members, I don't know if Harvey's still around. Harvey was on the State House seat commission, And I don't know if they've declared a deadlock yet to move it to the courts. Once that happens, it goes to the courts. The only one that's going to move fast is going to be the congressional one. And when the Republicans get back to Jeff City, they've got to move that fast because there are tens of millions of dollars of campaign contributions at stake there. And they need to know what those lines are so they can start running. So they're going to push very hard. And the problem is going to be, I can't see the Republicans agreeing among themselves as to what good lines are. Now, these are good lines for them, not good lines for us. I believe it is very possible they're trying to concoct a set of lines that will make it virtually impossible to have more than one Democrat in Congress from Missouri.
Right. Thank you, Glenn. We appreciate your muddling through all of this for us. Yes, it is depressing, and I know that's what I hear most from people. You know, it's always depressing, but you live in Missouri. So what can we say? All right, thank you so much. All right, everyone, just a reminder, we're back in the hall next month. Bring your coffee, your vaccination card, and a mask, and meet us there. You'll get more information from us about that. And remember, Tom Flanagan's wake is Sunday, December 19th. It's from 12 to 5 at McGurk's. Let's show up and give him a good send-off.
I think it's 12 to 3.
What? It's 12
I
to
think
3.
it's 12 to 3.
Yeah, what did I say? 12 to 5? Oh, no, 12 to 3. If you have really celebrated, you may sit there till 5. Anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. You too, everybody.
Yes.